Self-EMDR, positive affirmations. A lot of people know what positive affirmations are. Well, I'm talking about the same thing, except in a neurological, neurotherapeutic trance. We've already discussed how tapping my knees in order to introduce Self-EMDR does just that, pulses the hemispheres of the brain. We've discussed this. In the process, I bring my mind to the trauma, progressively eliminate the trauma, the discomfort, whatever I don't want in emotional terms. However, that can be supplemented with something else. While I also attend to the business of eliminating, reducing and then eliminating bad emotions, I can also do something else, and do. I introduce PAs, positive affirmations. So, a motor accident. We've discussed this motor accident. Not only am I engaged in reducing and then eliminating the negative emotions associated with that awful accident when I killed one of my children, my only child. We've discussed this. I can make this technique more effective, much more effective, by A, reducing and then eliminating the bad emotional responses, but B, introducing positive affirmations. As an example, if I encountered a friend or a family member who had been involved in a terrible, terrible accident like this, who was traumatized, who might be damaged for the rest of his or her life, I would support that person, console that person, encourage that person. Positive affirmations directed to myself. Do the same to myself. I'm consoling, I'm supporting, I'm helping, I'm being my own lawyer. And I do that by going into a trance state as before and just telling myself, reducing the negative emotions, yes, and then telling myself what I need to hear to be consoled, to be comforted, to be encouraged. As an example, the motor accident. I would progressively reduce the bad emotions, perhaps for 4 minutes of a 5-minute set, and the final minute I'm involved in not reducing or eliminating bad emotions, but rather giving myself something to replace them, an encouragement. I console myself. The two together make a very much more effective self-EMDR environment. So, what am I likely to say to myself? Something like this, perhaps. Everybody, but everybody, at one time or another, every driver is involved in a motor accident. And a driving lifetime, 50, 60, 70 years or whatever, in a driving lifetime, there will be accidents. What's wrong with an accident? We make mistakes in the process of learning. Question, is there any way of learning without making a mistake? What's your answer? We all make mistakes because we all learn. So I'm telling myself, while I'm in a trance, while I'm very receptive, emotionally receptive, I'm telling myself, everybody has an accident sometime. I'm saying this to myself. Everybody has an accident sometime. Because the only way to learn is to make mistakes. And not all accidents are our fault. I've made a mistake. It had a tragic outcome. My only child was killed. My wife was traumatized for months. I was guilty. But that does no good for anybody. And so what I did was consoled my wife, encouraged her, took her on an overseas trip. I was ultra nice. When she became depressed and angry, I understood. It was part, on her part, it was part and parcel of the healing process. I was there for her. In fact, I was able in a meaningful way to turn a tragedy into something constructive, positive, despite the fact the accident was my fault, and I accept that. Our relationship, my wife and I, our relationship is now better. We're both wiser human beings. The child who died will always be a member of our life. We'll always embrace the child. Every weekend we visit the child in the cemetery. And so, both my wife and I were able to turn a negative, tragic experience into a positive experience. So you can see what I'm doing. Not only have I reduced and then eliminated the negative emotions, but I've introduced thoughts, concepts into my life to replace what I eliminated. I've seen a positive outcome. And I've told myself, while I'm very, very receptive in a trance state, I've told myself, reminded myself, programmed myself along positive lines. So another example, Mary's child, Mary and John, their child has gone to hospital. It could be meningitis. It was not meningitis, but nobody knows what it is. Very traumatic for them. Mary or John, in doing self-EMDR, would eliminate the negative emotions progressively for the rest of their life, irrespective of the outcome, and then use PAs, positive affirmations. An example, a generation ago, a raft of diseases and accidents had a devastating outcome. But now, in this day and age, now, the outcome so often is perfect. A month downstream, the patient's home. We've all learned a lesson. 2 months downstream, the patient has forgotten about the whole thing. So we've turned a potential trauma, into something positive. In the process, the person doing the self-EMDR has introduced thought processes, concepts, ideas to console, to comfort him or herself. So, positive affirmations while in a neurological trance, self-EMDR.